So let's start with the first one, the traditional. Here we have ed. Now the general rule here is if the verb, the original verb ends with a t or a d sound, you're going to use ed for ed. So let's take a look at some examples. So here we have test, ends with a t sound. Now notice that the specification there is a sound because sometimes, especially in English, the letter it ends with, for example, silent E, that is not reflective of what rule to follow. So it's the t ending sound. So test becomes tested. Tested. Now notice it's not TED, like TED Talks. Tested. Tested. So the E's are slightly different. Let's try another one. Here we have end, becomes ended. Ended. And look, it looks just like did. So you can say did. Did he do it? Ended. So this is where even if you don't know what the phonetic symbol means, at least you can see like, okay, the two E's are pronounced slightly differently. And that's going to help you just clarify any questions you might have. All right, let's try another one. Wait becomes waited. Waited. Now, this one is interesting because here we have a little bit of that American influence that changes the T a little bit. So we have wait, which is sharp. But then if you notice when I say it waited, it becomes a flap T, which is that TD sound. So you could say waited. To me, that sounds a little bit more British because they enunciate the T's more than Americans do. And so we would say waited, waited. So this is where you can choose. For clarity purposes, if you need to say waited, that's fine. But if you want to practice that more natural accent, also good. Okay. Next example, we have need becomes needed. Needed. So notice here the double E, knee, like your knee on your leg. Needed. Okay. And remember, every time I pause, I'm not pausing for my health. I'm pausing because you need to repeat after me. If you have a mirror, if you have a phone, so you can look at your mouth shape and do what I'm doing. If you don't do it, what are you doing here? I don't want you to just watch me. Okay, let's try again. Add becomes added. 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 Good. All right, then we have start, started. So this is kind of like weighted, where the sharp T in start becomes more of a flap TD sound, started. So you can say started. But even when I say that, I feel like I get into a more British mode. So started. Started. So here we got star, your tongue goes back. Started. Okay. And here, let's take a look at them again. Relax your shoulders, shake it out. Ended. Waited. Needed. Added. Started. Good. The more you do it with these words, the reason I picked these words are because they are high frequency verbs. So these are words that I find most people use regularly. And this is going to help you feel comfortable recognizing the pattern because now you know the rule and you've got some words that you're more than likely going to use almost every day. Okay. And now we're going to practice because practicing in isolation, it's good for muscle memory, but really you want to practice it in a sentence because then we can apply connected speech and work on natural intonation. Okay, so here we have the meeting ended early. The meeting ended. So the duh, because we ended with a consonant going into a vowel sound, ended early. Ended early. Okay. Now here, the reason I have this one is because my Clients, and this might be like you, let me know if this is how you feel, tend to focus on, and I get it because the way that the testing system works, we're always striving for the C2 level because that's what we're told is fluent, right? B2 is intermediate, upper intermediate, and then we have C2, which is the max, and we have fluency. However, I find that that can be misleading for real life English. So even though, yes, there is C2 level, if you notice here, let's take a look at how we would say this statement at that level. The meeting concluded ahead of the scheduled time. It's C2, it's the highest level, but it sounds really formal. And it if you said this in a business context, in most business contexts, it would sound unnatural. We would just say the meeting ended early. If you responded with the meeting concluded ahead of the scheduled time, it would sound so formal. And this is where I say that a lot of times non native speakers speak better English than native speakers because you train yourself with this higher level of formality and the more complex structure. And so it sounds so much better, but it's not as natural. So I want you to feel confident that you can, but I also want you to have the option to choose the one that is most appropriate for your work setting. All right, so just for fun, let's do this one though. The meeting concluded ahead of the scheduled time. Good. And notice for scheduled, that's usually a difficult word. The D sounds like a j, j. Schedule, like jewelry, jeweled. Okay, good. All right, next example. The movie started an hour ago. Again. And here we have the started and so there's going to be a little bit of linking if it feels comfortable. The movie started an hour ago. Good. And here we have another example of what it would sound like if we took, because the movie started an hour ago. That's about intermediate level. To show you what a super advanced level would be, it would be the movie commenced precisely 1 hour ago. That is so formal. I would never say that. I would never use that particular structure to talk to a friend, which is when you would say this kind of statement, right? So, this is where I want you to be open minded that it's not that you need more advanced English to sound fluent. What you need is more natural English. Of course, commenced is a beautiful word to learn. But realistically, I want you to feel really confident saying and pronouncing started. So this is where you get out of student mode, where it's not always about the next level. It's really about the proficiency and confidence to find the most natural way. And I find that that's actually harder. So that's why I'm here for you. So let's practice the C2 level anyway. The movie commenced precisely 1 hour ago. Okay. All right. Notice that here for commenced, the ED, if you look at the pronunciation, it's actually a T, and we're going to learn that rule, so don't worry. All right, before we go on to the next one, you did great. That was the standard one that most people feel comfortable with, but there are going to be those moments like when the flap T sound that you're going to want more practice. So for now, before we get into the second form, 3, 2, 1. If you've developed a little bit of tension, because sometimes when we're learning something new or we're realizing our own past mistakes, you'll start lifting your shoulders and that creates tension. So we're going to release that in one breath. Okay. All right. Now the next one is we have the ED when it sounds like a T sound. Now the general rule for this one is if the original verb ends with, or the regular verb ends with a sound like these, you're going to use T. Now this is interesting because again, remember, it's the sound, not the spelling. So we have ch, we have the f, the F sound, but that could also be a word that ends with PH because that'll sound like F sometimes. And GH, that'll sound like F sometimes. So here we have the k, p, s, the S sound. And this is interesting to me, at least, because X even though it's the letter X, the ending sound is S. So you would apply this rule to a word that ends in X. Then we have sh and th. Now this one is specific. As you remember from the TH Masterclass, there are 2 types. And again, because English is so lovely, and when it has the opportunity to be simple, it goes the other way. Only the unvoiced will be followed by a t, ed. And then the voiced is different, which we'll learn next. If you're feeling tense, relax those shoulders. We're going to go through examples and you're going to feel really good about it. Okay, so here, let's take a look at look. It's got the k ending, so it turns into looked. Looked. And actually, I'll show you my lips for this one because sometimes people struggle with the ooh, l. Not lu and not la, but looked. Looked. Okay. And then here we have watch. So the TCH makes the ch sound. Watched. So for this one, the ch, that sound, if you struggle with that a little bit, it's going to have more effort. So you're really going to have that, it's going to feel that air blowing up it like at behind your teeth. Ch. So watched. Watched. Okay. And then we have help. So it ends with the p sound. Helped. Now, yes, would helped be easier to say? Yes. Why we complicated it this way? I don't know. But I'm here to help you practice it and feel good about it. So if you get caught up in the resentment of why is it like that? It could be, let it go. You're not going to change the rules. You're here to embrace them, learn them, practice them, and feel good. Okay? Helped. So here we have 2 air moments. Helped. And your tongue comes behind the teeth for the T. Helped. Okay. Relax. So that's got the X, but then it actually ends with a S sound. Relaxed. Relaxed. Good. And this is where sometimes I find the phonetic spelling can help because as you see here, it's a KST. So visually, when you see that, that might be easier for your brain and your mouth to connect and practice the sound. So kst. Good. Here we have work, k, ends with a k sound. So here it would become worked. Now, this is another good moment because if you notice, it's not war, but were. Think about WERE, were. So your lips are going to relax here. Don't go into the O. Work. The K is in your throat, and then it comes up to the T. Worked. Worked. By the way, take your time with these sounds. Not only are they new sounds, but as you see, the sound travels from different points in your mouth. Take your time with it. A lot of times when you're at this level of English, you think that faster means more fluent, but clear, connected means more fluent. So take your time with these sounds, allow your mouth, especially when you're practicing, practice it slowly because in real life, when you use it, you're going to speak faster than you practice. So practicing it slowly will allow you to then sound more clear and natural. Okay. And this one, laugh, the GH sounds like an F. Laughed. Good. So laughed. Because if you keep your mouth too small, it's going to sound like left, like right, left, left. Left is the direction. Laughed is the past tense of laugh. And again, this is where I think the phonetic is actually better because you see the F sound, not the GH. And so again, that helps your brain connect to your mouth differently, and it might just allow your tongue to make the movement that it needs to have the better pronunciation or the clearer pronunciation. Okay. All right, let's practice again. Watched, helped, relaxed, worked, laughed. Good. And now, because we never do anything only isolated, let's put it in a sentence. All right, here. Last night we watched a movie. Okay. And now to go over some of the things that we've done in other master classes and also connecting. Last night, notice that especially for American English, we don't really pronounce the T in last very often. So if it sounds like last night without the T, it's because that's how I'm actually saying it. If you want to enunciate it, or depending on what your situation, if it's public speaking, maybe you want to enunciate a little more. But typically, I wouldn't say last night. You'll only hear the T at the end of night. Last night, last night we watched. And this is why it's important to know how the ED sounds, because if you said watched, you're going to have a D connecting with the A, but it's actually a T sound. Watched, watched a movie. Good. All right, and here we're going to compare, and this is also to keep opening your mind of advanced English, fluent English does not necessarily mean C2 level. So here I want to just show you the comparison where we have the what I would think is more natural, which is B2. Last night we watched a movie. The C2 interpretation of that would be yesterday evening I indulged in the viewing of a captivating film. Nobody would say that. I want you to have the option. I love that you are here, and everybody that I work with is so passionate about wanting that next level vocabulary. And I love that. I love vocabulary and advanced words, but it's about knowing how to use them, when to use them, so that you always sound natural and appropriate for whatever message you're trying to convey. So, indulged, and this is the ED that we're learning next. Indulged. Okay. Yesterday evening, I indulged in the viewing of a captivating film. And notice here, it viewing of the F and of sounds like a V. So instead of fa, there's no air. It's a vibration of v. Good. So here again, if you want to say that you indulged in the viewing of a captivating film, great. More power to you. But I do want you to know that in order to have more natural interactions, more natural conversations, keep an open mind that it's not that you need C2, it's that you need to really feel good about. Honestly, I think B2 is usually enough, and then sprinkle in some C2 vocabulary every now and then. All right. Next one. He asked me about that yesterday. Now, this is a challenging one. Let's try again. He asked me about that yesterday. So the first time you read it, you're going to really pay attention to what you're doing. The second and third time that you read it, because I recommend reading sentences 3 times, you're going to focus on intonation and personality. So imagine that your colleague is talking to you, and this is what you're telling your colleague. Oh, yeah, he asked me about that yesterday. He asked me about that yesterday. He asked me about that yesterday. So notice that every time I'm playing with the intonation. And as you can imagine, the intonation and the body language, the facial expressions, it will present it differently. So if it's not a big deal, yeah, he asked me about that yesterday. If you're unsure, he asked me about that yesterday. So this is where playing around with intonation, finding your voice will give you the option to convey things more clearly. All right, and here let's take a look at what this would look like at C2 level. Yesterday, he inquired about that matter. And this is where, sorry, I'll let you go ahead and say it. Okay, great. But this is where, again, a non-native speaker will sound better, will sound more formal than a native speaker because you're so focused on using higher level structure, higher level vocabulary, but it's not going to sound, we would just never say, yesterday he inquired about that matter. So practice it, have fun with it, but then you want to pick and choose which one sounds more natural. So you could even say, oh, I think he inquired about that. But inquired, yeah, you can use inquired, but I prefer asked, which is a little tougher pronunciation wise. So let's go over that again. Asked. So notice how the sound travels. Asked. Good. Practice it slowly. Build that muscle memory. It's going to be something that feels different. So you have to practice that slowly over and over. And then when it feels good, it'll come naturally when you're speaking. All right. Before we move on to the next one, 3, 2, 1 again. I find that this particular masterclass is one of the ones that causes the most tension. So that's why I have so many 3, 2, 1 moments. You want to relax. Keep an open mind. If you need to, go ahead and drink water right now. Got to take care, make sure everything feels comfortable, even if you're not quite confident yet, and that's going to help. Okay, next up, we have the ED as d. So the general rule here is if the original verb, the root verb, ends with a vowel sound or one of these sounds that you see here, you're going to use d instead of or for the ED sound. So let's take a look at what this means in practice. So for example, here we have love. This is a great example of it ends in an E, but it actually ends in a V sound. And as we look here, V is one of the sounds for this one. So instead of loved, it's going to be loved. And for the O, not lo, but it's the more like a schwa, more like a like the an up, la, loved. And this is good practice for those of you if you're struggling with the V sound. You're going to make sure it's a vibrational sound. Loved. Good. It when you're practicing it like this, it's not going to feel natural, but you need those exaggerated movements to make sure that you are really mastering the muscle memory. Okay? One more time because this is such a good word. Loved. Okay. Here we have play. So play ends in a vowel sound, even though Y is technically a consonant. It's a E sound, play. So this rule would apply, and play becomes played. Played. Okay. Open ends with an N sound, so it becomes opened. Opened. O, not O, but O. Make sure it goes into the U sound. Opened. Okay. Agree. So it ends in a vowel sound. E becomes agreed. Agreed. Greed, even looks like the word, right? Greed, greed. And then we have not agreed, not but you've got the g in the mouth and then the tongue back for the R. Greed. Okay. Breathe. Now this one, this is great for us to practice because now we've got, it ends in an E, but the E is silent. So the sound is breathe. And that's going to be the voiced TH. So what I did here when you're looking at the videos, I have the symbol for the voiced TH, and then you have the unvoiced, which is a circle with a line. So here, breathe. It's the voice, the vibration. So that one, this rule would apply, not the other one. Breathe becomes breathed. Oh, I know this one's hard. So this one, this is why I have this after the TH, because being able to feel comfortable with the TH to then apply it for this, it's a little more complicated, is great, right? So here, let's practice slowly. Breathe, my tongue's back. Breathe, and then up here, d, d, breathed. This is why you're going to practice over and over. You're going to do it slowly because it is about the tongue as a muscle. It's about moving it back for the R, back up, vibrating outside your mouth for the TH, and then coming back in for the D sound. That's a rounder sound than the T. Okay, good. And we have use. Now, this is another one because it ends in a silent E, but the S here is not an S. So this is where it's important to either understand the root words or look it up and double check your work, because use is a Z sound. And so there, this rule applies that you see here, even though it ends with an E, silent, the next letter is an S, but that's not the sound. It's the Z sound. So use becomes used. Used. So the tongue is vibrating behind your teeth. Zd. Used. So if you're saying used, you said, now you know why. Sometimes you might have people kind of look at you like, huh? It's not your English necessarily, it's the mispronunciation of the ED, so it doesn't sound familiar, and it can cause, usually with the context, they'll figure out what you mean, but it's just that moment. And so when you get those looks, your confidence might be rocked a little bit, and then that impacts your message and your conversation. So by having these tiny moments be a little more correct, it's going to help you feel more confident throughout more of your spoken day. Okay, used. Good. Let's practice all over. Ready? Played. Opened. Agreed. Breathed. Used. Good. All right, so this one, repeat after me. You played well today. Good. And now we're going to practice just emphasizing different words. You played well today. You played well today. You played well today. Good. Keep just having fun with intonation is the best thing you can do, because then you start feeling like, oh, if I emphasize today, that makes it sound like this person usually doesn't play well. It's just today. You played well today is great for when you want to highlight the person. Maybe you're talking to a group and you want this individual to know. So play around with the intonation. All right, so here, let's take a look at what it would look like at the C2 level. The way you performed on the field today was commendable. If you're an extra formal coach, great. But for the most part, you played well today is going to be better. But let's practice the C2 anyway. The way you performed on the field today was commendable. Good. And notice that perform ends with a sound. So we're going to use the d, not performed, performed. Excellent. And let's try this one. I used the new software, but I didn't like it. Okay, good. So used the new software. Notice that for software, again, that we kind of eat the T for that one. I don't usually say software. So for this one, it's one of those moments of where you start learning like, okay, I don't hear it because it's not there. Software, software. So this is great if you're an engineer, if you're working in tech. Little distinction, but it makes your English sound more natural. All right, now here let's compare it to what it would sound like at C2. I operated the newly developed software. However, it failed to meet my expectations. It's dramatic. You can just say, I used the new software or I didn't like the new software. I think that's going to be more conversational versus I operated the newly developed software. Honestly, even for a meeting with executives, I would still opt for the more natural form of I used the new software. The overly formal C2 level, maybe in a written report, would be somewhere where I would say could be appropriate. But, American English does tend to be more, American English tends to be more in general for native speakers at a B2 level. The difference is where a non native speaker, where you might feel you struggle, is the construction, the idiomatic expressions, um, how to sound the most natural. So that's why I have the sentences that I do in your master classes, because I want you to feel good that you could use C2, but I want you to feel really good that you know how to use B2 at a point where you sound like you. I think that's the one that allows you to sound the most genuine, the most authentic. All right. And here, let's review. So you did it. You now know the 3 ways that you can pronounce the ED, where the first time you saw this slide, maybe you felt overwhelmed. Whew, I want you to celebrate that now you see this slide and you see potential. You know, like, okay, I know how to revisit the rule to figure out which one's which. I know how to go and look up the phonetic transcription, the pronunciation, and now I know how to interpret when I see the T when it's an ED. Now I know why it's like that. So this is for you to know that you do not have to feel overwhelmed. You have a way to check it. Check out the additional resources that I have for you so that you can review it. You can print it out if you want. And this is going to really help you feel a lot more confident with something that seems simple, but is not easy. Okay, so my number one tip for you is don't freak out about all the verbs in all of English. Just make a list. The ones that I have here in this masterclass are very high frequency, so I would start with those and then just observe yourself as you go throughout your day and make a list of the verbs that you use on a regular basis. And then if they're regular verbs, now you know how to check. You can go back to the rule, which I'll have for you in a PDF, or you can look up the pronunciation and then you'll recognize a symbol, the id, the t, or the duh. So don't worry about every verb. Just identify the verbs that you need and that you use. Also, now that you've seen the rules, it becomes so much better. At least you know there's some sense to it. I hope. All right, you did an amazing job. I really hope that this helped give you clarity and it helped give you the structure and the rules that you need to check yourself, because that's how you're going to feel extra good.